Welcome to Feminist Question Time, brought to you by Women's Declaration International, the leading global organisation defending women's sex-based rights against the threats posed by gender identity ideology. There's more information on our website, womensdeclaration.com, where you'll find our Declaration on Women's Sex-Based Rights, which has been signed by 33,307 people from 160 countries and is supported by 463 organisations from all over the world. We have over 100 volunteer activists, including 53 country contacts engaged in defending women's rights. Today, we have Lierre Keith and Kara Dansky from the USA. They're going to give us analysis and update on a California court that has ruled in favour of women's sex-based rights and spaces, and possibly another couple of court cases. Then we're going to hear from Rona, Duwe and Wagner from Germany, from Let Women Speak Germany, Lasst Frauen Sprechen. They will talk to us about what's happening in Germany in terms of that Let Women Speak, those actions and what they're doing, what's going on. Then we are hoping to hear from Catherine from Canada, who's not managed to join yet, but we hope she will do, and we expect she will do, on the parallels between trans and assisted death. So she's been watching and doing some research on what's going on in legislation and also in changes in practice on those issues, and looking at some interesting parallels. Then we're going to hear from Susanne from Germany. She's going to talk about her experiences of the Dyke marches in Germany. And so that should be good. Then we're aiming to have an update from the Ministry of Justice demo by Keep Prisons Single Sex, and also sort of promotion of the action that Furness is working on to do with keeping toilets single sex. So hopefully that will be ready, but we will see what happens towards the end of the webinar. I'm really pleased now to welcome our first two panelists, and they are Kara Dansky and Lierre Keith. Kara Dansky is the president of Women's Declaration International USA. She's the author of The Abolition of Sex, which was published last year, 2021, and is widely available and fantastic. She is also a lawyer or attorney, as I think Americans might call it. We also have Lierre Keith, who is the chair of WOLF, Women's Liberation Front, also from the USA. She is a prolific author of many good books. The most recent one she's co-author of is Bright Green Lies, which is excellent. So I've read both of these books and they're both highly recommended. Thank you so much, both of you, and over to you.
We had a huge win in the United States, and this is basically the first, the best. We're all stunned because this has gone so well. And this was a free speech case. Green is a man who thinks he's a woman, and he sued the Miss USA beauty contest because he wanted to be a contestant, and the women told him no. So he took them to court. And you may wonder, well, what is a feminist group doing supporting a beauty pageant? And, you know, the real issue is not that it's a beauty pageant. The real issue is that women should be able to say no to men. So this was a First Amendment case. Again, it's, you know, this guy wanted to join this beauty pageant, and he originally won. It was a state anti-discrimination law, and the women just kept saying, no, you can't be in our beauty pageant. So it gets bumped up to the next higher court. But the reason that we took this on, there were two big reasons. The first is that almost all of these First Amendment rights cases that have come sort of across our desk at this point, they're religious. They're brought by religious people. And their argument is, hey, the Bible says it's male and female. It's against my religion to call a woman, you know, with a male name or using a male pronoun, and we're supposed to have freedom of religion. Now, freedom of religion is under the First Amendment, but we feel like that's an incredibly weak argument, and it only works for people who are very religious. To us, it has nothing to do with religion. It has to do with reality. So to date, it's been really hard. We have submitted radical feminist arguments to the courts in these cases and hope that they make more sense than the religious argument. But this was not a religious group. This was just a group of women who didn't want a man. And we thought it was just, this was going to be it's well worth our time to jump in on this one because it was not a religious case. And then the other thing is that it was actually a women's group, because these other cases are usually somebody's suing a school because the college or the local school is making a teacher use pronouns. So the school is what's being sued, but this was a group of women being sued. So on both cases, we felt like, this was a brief that we really wanted to submit. And we won. The opinion that the judge ruled with this, they actually quoted our brief. Now, when I say our brief, I want to be clear. I'm not a lawyer. I did not write this brief. This is not a skill set I present. But we have this incredible lawyer, Lauren Bone, and honestly, this is her win, and she should be doing this presentation. She didn't want to. She wanted me to do it. So, but we need to throw the glory on Lauren, because she's the one who wrote this incredible brief. And I highly recommend that all of you, if you get a moment, go to the Wolf website and read the document that she wrote, because it is just a radical feminist argument, just swords and knives and shields just going full force with the rad femery. It was just an amazing thing that she did. So, okay, this was one of our arguments, that women need free speech and the right to associate together in order to protect and advance our rights. This seems obvious, but we're having to argue this in court now. And what he said was that laws that protect historically marginalized groups should apply to me, the man, and not to women. So what his lawyers tried to do was position him as the poor oppressed person and women as this larger, terrible category that oppresses people, which is obviously completely backwards. Our next argument, we said Green is a man and the law protects sex. It does not protect his gender feelings. And he is a man. And he said, I'm biologically female because I am stereotypically feminine. That's literally what this guy argued. He said, because he is so lovely feminine, whatever, with his curly and his makeup, and that makes him a woman. That was literally what he tried to argue in court. He said that he was indistinguishable from, quote, cisgender women, and that he is a natural born woman. Those were his words. He is a natural born woman. Now, I got to tell you, infants know the difference between a male and a female face. Infants, like people who are 3 weeks old, who can see enough. The first thing they can see is the difference between a male and a female face. My dogs know the difference between men and women. There's not a culture that's ever existed that does not know the difference between men and women. But he is claiming he's a natural born woman because he likes putting on makeup. Okay, our argument was that gender identity ideology is regressive and harmful to women, and the court agreed. This is why this is a victory. And he said, I'm a biological female because I'm stereotypically feminine. So we were quoted. This beautiful brief that Lauren wrote was actually quoted in the opinion, which this is like this minor miracle that fell upon us. So Green believes that femaleness is defined by femininity, which is a socially constructed role that by design keeps women in a subordinate, subservient position. That is what Green believes about women's natural state. Feminists have been fighting against this toxic system for generations. So that's what Lauren wrote in our brief, and that's what the judge in part quoted. So this is the beginning of the section where Lauren explains the radical feminist arguments against gender identity. To believe that sex is determined by a gendered soul or a feminine appearance rather than biology is to believe that femininity is the same thing as being female. That's offensive and harmful to women, and it's also antithetical to civil rights, but the court is being asked to adopt a very regressive belief. And again, this is more of this wonderful brief that Lauren wrote. A gender identity is a subjective statement of self-perception. And so under that, a woman would simply be a person who identified as a woman. But what would that actually mean? So it completely destroys, just the actual reality of what sex is, which she says is nonsense. And so he believed, the judge completely agreed with us that, and the ultimate point is that there were lots of reasons to object for this man being allowed into this beauty pageant. And all of them fall under the First Amendment, and women have First Amendment rights. So it was kind of an amazing thing. And then I'm also supposed to point out to you all the people who were on the other side of this. So for instance, the Lambda Legal Defense Fund, the National Center for Lesbian Rights, of course, people like, the ACLU, And a lot of their arguments are that women are now the big oppressors and this poor man is the oppressed person. They tried to use this case, that's the Roberts case. And that case was, so there was a men's group. Women were already members, but they weren't voting members. And the women they sued to try to get voting rights in this group as well. And the men claimed that they had, quote, freedom of expressive association. Now, that's one of the things that the women in the beauty pageant claimed. These men lost, though. So this man, Green, what he's trying to say is that this is parallel, that because the men weren't allowed to have that, the women shouldn't be allowed to have it, and therefore he should be allowed to join. But we say there's a significant difference because, first of all, there's the power differential. Like, women don't have a chokehold on power like men do. And second of all, that, it's not parallel because he's not an oppressed person. So it just shouldn't, this is just not the same thing at all. And the court agreed with us. So that's really the important thing. Anyway, so it's a unique evil. I think that was the point where we were all just laughing ourselves sick, but that is what this guy ruled. So we've had a bunch of cases this year that have been pretty good. This is absolutely the best one. And the reason that we're going after a lot of these First Amendment cases is I really want people to understand we are this tiny little David against this enormous Goliath. And these other groups like the ACLU and even Lambda Legal, I mean, they have stables of lawyers and we have one. So we're trying to figure out, like, what is the best use of her time and then the tiny bit of money that we've been able to collect from radical feminists to try to do our lawfare. And these First Amendment cases keep coming up. So it seems important to keep engaging with them. And now we actually are making progress. So it seems to have been the correct strategy. So the Merriweather case, that one was won by Mr. Merriweather. He is a teacher. It was one of those teacher religious cases, but he is not being forced to use the pronouns. And we did submit a brief in that case, also very radical feminist. This one is ours, though. Green is just absolutely amazing because radical feminism was quoted. This one's coming up, Blaming. That's also about the forced pronouns. And then Greenberg. This one's terrifying in the United States. A lot of people haven't heard about this because it only affects lawyers. But what's happening is they're trying to change the ethical rules for lawyers such that lawyers will be forced to use the pronouns. Lawyers will be forced to use ridiculous language like calling men women. And this really should just strike terror in people's hearts. So we did submit a brief for that one as well. And, who knows where that one's going to go, but that just can't be allowed to stand. So that was our great big victory. And again, I just want everybody to read the brief if you get a moment, because it's just the clearest radical feminist argument you could ever want. She just absolutely killed it. And support Wolf if you can, if you live in the United States especially. And I'm going to turn this over to Kara, who is an actual lawyer and probably has more intelligent things to say than me.
I've thought for some time now that when we're going to win, and we are, it will be because men in Black robes like the First Amendment. And that's proving to be true with what Lierre is saying about speech. Okay, so as Lierre said, this is not about beauty pageants. Most of us are categorically opposed to beauty pageants. In 1968, feminists protested Miss America, and had I been alive then, I would happily have joined them. So this is just a very fun poster from that era. This is literally a hard copy of a flyer inviting women only to travel from New York City to Atlantic City for that very purpose. And I just want to thank Bonnie Atwood, who may be here today, who dug out this actual flyer from her files for us to hand out at the WDI USA convention in September. So thanks to Bonnie. So celebrating this ruling is not about celebrating beauty pageants. It is instead about celebrating women-only spaces and freedom of speech. Now, when I first heard about the ruling, I was excited to hear that it was a victory for free speech for women. But when I finally sat down and read the entire ruling, I was thrilled to see that it is really so much more. So I want to just read the gist of the ruling, in part because it makes it so clear just how crystal clear this ruling is, but also because of the language that the court uses. And I'm going to use quotes where the court uses quotes because I think it matters. Okay, so this is directly from the ruling. Anita Green, who self-identifies as an openly transgender female, sued the Miss USA pageant alleging that the pageant's natural-born female eligibility requirement violates the State Public Accommodations Act that Lierre mentioned. Okay, the district court, that's the lower court, granted the pageant's motion for summary judgment, holding that the First Amendment protects the pageant's expressive association rights to exclude a person who would impact the group's ability to express its views. We conclude that the district court was correct to grant the pageant's motion, but reached this conclusion not under the First Amendment's protection of freedom of association, but rather under the First Amendment's protection of against compelled speech. So it's very interesting that the court uses the phrase self-identifies. This appears to me to be an implicit acknowledgement that trans is just an identity and that it isn't real in any material sense. Now, the court isn't saying this explicitly, but I'm having trouble imagining a scenario in which the court could manage to disagree with that assertion, given its deliberate choice to use the phrase. Judges, particularly federal appellate judges, choose their words carefully. I've read other judicial opinions that say things like, plaintiff is a transgender woman. The phrase self-identifies here reads very differently. What's even more interesting for those of us immersed in the gender wars is this, and again, I'm quoting the court. As explained in the briefing, Plaintiff Green claims to have been assigned the gender of male at birth, but came out as transgender at the age of 17. Further, Green later took medication to alter hormone levels and underwent cosmetic surgery in which Green's male anatomy was reconstructed to appear as female anatomy. Now, those of us in the trenches of this debate know that some people claim to be trans because they have taken hormones and had surgeries to make them look more like the opposite sex, whereas for others, trans is just an identity that you can just declare, a bit like Eddie Izzard claiming to have a girl mode and a boy mode. What the court seems to be saying here is that Green self-identifies as transgender, even having had the hormones and surgeries, which to me strongly suggests that this court thinks that even when a person has had the hormones and surgeries, trans is still nothing other than a self-identification. I would go further and call trans an outright lie, but this concession from the court is pretty astonishing, and I'll take it. The phrase claims to have been assigned the gender of male at birth is another signal to me that this particular panel of the Ninth Circuit is not caving to the nonsensical idea that sex is assigned at birth. Finally, the fact that the court uses the phrase cosmetic surgery to describe a trans surgery, or to use the preferred contemporary euphemism, gender-affirming care, is even more astonishing. We have been referring to it as cosmetic surgery for years, and this is the first time I have seen that characterization appear in a court ruling. I want to say a few things about what might happen next, because someone in the chat asked the question, will it be appealed? As far as I can tell, the plaintiff, Green, the man, has three options before him. He can, one, do nothing. If he does nothing, this ruling will stand throughout the Ninth Circuit, which is a big deal. We have other cases pending before the Ninth Circuit, and this opinion is controlling in the Ninth Circuit, which includes the states of California, Oregon, Washington, Arizona, I think Nevada, and I think Montana and Idaho. So if this ruling stands, that will be massive. There are some people who think that it is in the plaintiff's strategic interest to do exactly that, because this opinion is so strong. I don't know whether he will do that. I don't know whether he will let this stand. It strikes me as highly unlikely that he will just let this stand, but he might. A second thing he can do is petition to go before the full court. The panel that made this ruling was 3 judges, and the ruling was a majority of 2, and 1 judge dissented. The Ninth Circuit consists of 29 sitting judges, and Green has the right to petition to go before that full court. He can do that if he wants to. And it's anyone's guess as to how the full court would rule if he chose to do that. The other thing he could do is petition to go before the Supreme Court and bypass the full Ninth Circuit completely. Now, none of us know what they'll decide to do. Clearly, our opposition, as Lierre said, is very well funded. So any of those are on the table. And WDI USA has been talking internally about getting involved in this litigation. We did not get involved at the lower court stages because we knew about Wolf's brief and we totally support it. So we chose not to get involved until now. But if this case proceeds, we think we're going to have to find a way to get involved, and we're very excited to do that. So those are some options before the plaintiff, and we'll wait to see what happens, and we'll keep you all informed. Just before I say goodbye to you all, I want to also briefly mention, coming on the heels of this astonishing Ninth Circuit victory, we literally just heard yesterday about a case coming out of the state of Vermont, where a young woman, athlete, was in her locker room and a male student entered the locker room, and she didn't like that, and she complained, and she said some things about her opposition to the man being in the girls' locker room. Her father was a coach at the same school, and he also made some public statements opposing allowing men or boys into the girls' locker room. The school, in turn, punished both of them. They informed the girl, the female athlete, that she was going to have to attend a restorative circle and hear all about how her opposition to men in the changing room, was offensive to a marginalized community. And she was going to have to write an essay to school administrators, setting out how she intended to reform herself. And if the essay passed the school administrators' requirements and if it met their expectations, then she would be rehabilitated. The father was threatened with termination from his job as a coach. They sued under the First Amendment, and we just learned yesterday that the school has completely backed down. The school has removed any sign of punishment or recrimination against the girl or her father. And we think that this is a sign that everyone knows what's happening here. Everyone knows the girls are not going to stand for this. Parents are not going to stand for this. And we think our opponents are on the run, and we're very happy about it. So thanks to WDI for having me. Thanks to Lierre for talking about this great case. And thanks again to Wolf for the wonderful brief.
We're now going to hear from Rona, Duwe and Inna Wagner. They're from Germany, and they are from an organization, Lasst Frauen Sprechen, Let Women Speak, an organization that wants to encourage women in Germany to reclaim the streets and defend our sex-based rights. They're going to talk about how the group, the last demonstrations and plans for the future. Inna is going to speak first, and she has been an active radical feminist for a few years. She's been involved with WDI, that's Women's Declaration International Germany, since 2020. And this summer, she launched the initiative Lasst Frauen Sprechen. And she will speak first for a few minutes, and then Rona, who is a graphic designer, writer, feminist, activist, and mother, has a PowerPoint that she'll present to talk more about the organization and the action. So thank you so much, both of you, for coming on, and over to you.
Our group, Lasst Frauen Sprechen, was started as a solidarity action with Christina Ellingsen, a feminist from Norway. Norway is a country that likes to present itself as a pioneer in issues of gender equality and feminism. This reputation was overturned when powerful trans lobby took use of state power and attacked a feminist. When I was informed about the police investigation against Christina, I had to act. My anger could not be controlled otherwise. I started calls and in all the groups I knew and looked for supporters and found them. It was as if women were looking for connections to protest against misogynistic politics. This is exactly what our group offers. We are a union of women's rights organizations and autonomous women. We are a grassroots movement. We are flexible. We have ideas. We are from all generations. Our women are between 18 and 78 years old. We come from all backgrounds, schoolgirls, students, housewives, professionals, retired, single mothers, lesbians, straights, bi. We are financially independent, means penniless, but we can deal with it. We put money together for our expenses. And as women, we are not afraid of long-term challenges, and we follow our goals without financial profit. In radical feminism, we have learned that women have rights, that our human dignity counts, that our struggle for women's liberation is existential for the future of our daughters. We will not betray our daughters. We will fight tirelessly for their safe future. Thank you. And now I give the floor to Rona.
I want to talk a bit about what we did last year. We did already 3 demonstrations this year, and we have the motto, "Women defend their sex-based rights and reclaim the streets in Germany." So we are a core group of about 20 to 30 women of all ages, from 18 to 78. Ina told about it. And in our group are women from very different backgrounds, life situations, and sexual orientations. We have single mothers, lesbians, hetero and bisexual women, women who escape prostitution, abuse victims from queer circles. These are especially the young women. And in short, angry women who want to do something. The women mainly belong to different groups and organizations, and we cling them together. We meet and exchange regularly on Telegram, Zoom, or in real life, and join together on certain occasions for public action. The group thrives on each woman contributing her qualifications and experience, and we cultivate lively exchange and appreciative debate. Our goals are to create links between the many different women and women's groups in Germany. We want to give women and women's groups a platform for their protest. We want to give visibility to feminist resistance in different cities in Germany. We also want to provide information materials. We want to make the existing groups visible so that women know where to go. And we want to stimulate own actions and to support and strengthen ideas of women, and want to make the press and politicians aware of us and our concerns. So the first demonstration was in solidarity with Christina Ellingsen in front of the Norwegian embassy in Berlin. As you can see, we had employees of the ambassador who were coming to us. So we informed press and public about the police persecution of Christina Ellingsen. We highlighted the consequences of gender identity for women, children, and freedom of speech, and showed that this case is also very important for women all over the world, and especially also in Germany, because we don't have already a self-ID legislation, but they want to try to bring it in. We presented an open letter to the Norwegian ambassador, and we managed to get the embassy staff to listen to us for 1 hour and to be informed about self-ID. Coincidence was that on the same day, the key points of the German self-ID law were presented in the Bundestag. We had a broad alliance of German feminist groups supporting the action and participated. We achieved press attention, which is not so easy in Germany. Feminist bloggers and vloggers, as well as feminist groups, provided information about the action, and there were about 50 women at the demo. So the next action was in Stuttgart on August the 8th, and it was again against self-ID laws and in solidarity with Christina Ellingsen. It was a bit a smaller demonstration, but Stuttgart was chosen as a demo location because a lot of German feminists live in South Germany. Also, one of the most aggressive trans activists and lesbian spokesman for the Green Party, Maike Pfuderer, comes from Stuttgart. You see him below. And he is very misogynistic in social media. And you have this quote of him, "So many turfs and only one scythe." Nobody in the Green Party says something against him. He can do whatever he wants against women in the party and out of the party. It's a really big problem. Stuttgart happens shortly after the Dyke March in Hamburg, where a group of radical feminist lesbians were attacked. So Susanne of Real Dyke March will talk about it later. And two of the courageous young women who participated had very strong speeches at this demonstration. They are documented on our Instagram. So this somehow initiated the mix of generations in our group and strengthened the connection between us. So the last demonstration was in front of the Federal Party Conference of the Green Party in Bonn against their misogynistic politics, and we were there for 2 days. The Greens are currently the governing party, one of the governing parties in Germany. We focused on 3 topics and printed flyers for them, and it was about the legalized sex purchase and prostitution in Germany that the Greens support. The self-ID law that the Greens want to enforce in Germany, and the opening towards a legislation of surrogacy and egg donation in Germany, which is supported mainly by queer Greens. In addition, we talked about the misogyny of Green Party members, which spreads unchained on social media, also within the party. On the first day, about 60 women were present. Many speeches were held, among others, by important activists against prostitution in Germany and women who have left prostitution. We got into conversation with passers-by and Green Party members, but most of them did not want to hear our point of view. A queer Green Party woman filmed our appearances and posted them on Instagram. So nice. I will show it on the next slide. And our demo was deliberately disrupted by Fridays for Future demonstrators who thought they were Antifa, and among other things, stole our flyers to dispose of them and turned up their sound system, but we went on and on. On the second day, there were still about 20 women coming, and on this day, there was a TRA counter-demonstration, but they joined a rally for the protests in Iran to hide a bit, and they were not really interested in these issues for women. And the queer Green Party members came with turf t-shirts, so we were noticed. Our group was also a topic of discussion during the party conference, and the second day was dominated by direct confrontations and conversations with party members and trans activists. So here you can see the Andrea Peuler-Kempe, Queer Green, filming us, and then the next day they came with these t-shirts. The F in TERF doesn't stand for feminism. And in the group picture over there, you see one of them is standing right next to Family and Women's Affairs Minister Lisa Paus. So you see they tolerate misogyny and they do nothing against it. We achieved, which was really great, we achieved great press attention before, during, and after the demo, because a lot of journalists seem to be interested to do something against the Green Party, because they are very successful at the moment in Germany, and there is a big interest to show the other side of the Greens. And our demo was filmed and probably will be part of a documentation. We also had women from various feminist groups at this demonstration, as well as well-known feminist German activists. So there were sisters, Feminist Party Die Frauen, Women's Declaration Germany, the Real Dyke March, Radfem Bremen, Radfem Darmstadt, Terdefem Dortmund, and so on. And some famous women as Eva Engelken, Simone Kleinert, Dr. Ingeborg Kraus, Sabine Constable, and even a fellow woman from the Flying Lesbians who performed a song for us. This was very nice. So many women came from far away. So our plans are now, we are encouraged by the positive response. We have created a web presence and we have the following plans. We don't want to do an action for Violence Against Women's Day on November the 25th. We will do an action for International Women's Day on 8th of March. We want to create networking of women and women's groups throughout Germany through our website using a map and a central referral email address. We just updated it yesterday. We want to make our flyers available to women and women's groups and create other flyers on feminist issues so everyone can use it, because we can do the texting and the graphic design, and other women and women's groups can use it. And we also put links of other feminist groups on these flyers. For example, we want to do something on abortion, on single mothers, and on violence against women. We want to complete an informational brochure on self-ID. We want to provide letter templates for writing to politicians, doctors, and associations. And we want to give a book corner, a book rental, and book reviews on mainly German feminist books, because we have a lot of older lesbian feminists in our group who have a lot of literature and would like to spread it also to younger feminists. And we want to give advice how to start actions in your own city, how to register demonstrations, how to do security, and so on. So this is a part of our website. Yeah, and we have the impression that more and more women of all generations in Germany are longing for networking, support, and activism. A point has now been reached to have a presence in as many places in Germany as possible. Therefore, we are working on facilitating private meetings among women, as well as organizing public actions. In our groups, actions are always organized in a low threshold and grassroots way by many women. And we love how we can interact between generations and learn from each other. This has a really great quality. We hope that we have given a small insight into our activism, and thank you so much for your support. Thank you for your attention.
We're going to go to Susanne now, and Susanne is from Germany, and she is going to talk to us about her experience of the Dyke marches in Germany, about attending the Dyke marches in Germany and the demo in Bonn. Susanne got into radical feminism very early, knows the queer trans scene very well. It's only thanks to radical feminism that she truly accepted herself as a lesbian and formed politics around that. Susanne wants theory and action to make up equal parts of her feminism. She's a member of LGB Alliance Germany, the feminist party Die Frauen, Tiefgrüne, also of Tiefgrüne Widerstand, which is deep green resistance in progress, and Lasst Frauen Sprechen, the Let Women Speak. She's also part of a network of a growing number of regional radfem groups, and founded Les Blan Visibility, and of course the real Dyke March, which we're going to hear about. How was this year special for you and lesbians in Germany and everyone?
So how is this year special? This year is special because self-ID is self-ID was announced yet again. Like last time, it was rejected by the Bundestag. It might just pass this time because we have a different government. And this government is very liberal, neoliberal. The Green Party and the FDP is, they were the parties who tried to get self-ID passed the last time around, and it only got rejected because of the coalition that was made up the government last time. So now, like, I feel like yes. So this because they already tried to pass this law, and radical feminists went against it, but this time around we were a little more prepared, and so there's a growing radical feminist resistance in Germany because of the way the government is treating the feminist movement, because they want to pass this law. So like the situation is very heated. There was a huge thing with Marie-Louise Vollbrecht, who is a doctorate, like she wants to be a doctor of biology. She's doing this right now, and she wanted to give a talk on just human biology, human sexual dimorphism at her university, the talk was cancelled at first because trans activists protested, and this really made it to the through the press. Like it got really huge, and so like they basically failed their no debate approach here in Germany. It's in the press now. People are talking about it, and so the radical feminist movement is growing. So this is the situation right now in Germany, and why this year is really special.
How long have you been going to Dyke marches, and can you tell us about the Dyke marches in Germany, say in the last few years, and then what's changed?
Right, so there are Dyke marches in Germany in several cities. The first city to have a Dyke march was Berlin, and that was, well, a couple of years ago, I think before my time. I'm in my early 20s. And right now, there's like a network, they're called like Dyke March Germany, and they're like, they're Dyke marches, like they're helping organize Dyke marches in several cities here. And they've been getting more and more queer, basically. And they all have like stars, asterisks, I think they're called, next to lesbian or dyke in their names. So to signify that men are included as well, and everyone is included, of course. And so last year there already was a confrontation at a Dyke march, and at the Dyke March Cologne at that. But this year things really escalated after a demonstration organized by the WDI Germany. A group of women-loving women went to the Dyke March, and we had like a rainbow flag saying LGB. I had the Labrys flag. I was holding the Labrys flag, and like banners with the definition of lesbian on it, a homosexual human female. And yes, we were attacked. I'm actually gonna drop a link in the chat to an English translation to what exactly happened at Cologne, at Dyke March Cologne this year. So yes, the Dyke marches have been getting more queer. We were attacked, and after that, we decided, okay, we're not going to take this anymore. We're founding the real Dyke March. That's what we called ourselves. I'm going to explain why in a second. And we're going to go to Dyke March Berlin next. And so we went to the Dyke March Berlin, Dyke March Hamburg, and Dyke March Bremen after that. And we weren't exactly met with warm welcomes. We were attacked again. We were harassed. Yes, they also tried to paint us as fascists, Nazis, right-wing extremists, and so on. But we also got a lot of support, actually, and it got pretty big. One video was shared on Twitter, was seen on Twitter like 200,000 times worldwide. I think it was the one where I was like, it was in Hamburg, I was walking, and then there was this guy who said he has like a feminine soul or whatever, like dressed in drag, and he kept just pestering us and yelling at us and like very male socialized, displaying very male socialized behavior. And like this was seen 200,000 times on Twitter.
What sort of violence, or if any, and trans rights activist protests have there been at Dyke marches? I know you've told us a bit, but could you tell us a bit more about what's happened at the demos and the marches? Right, so there were 7 of them in total. Like we went to 4 Dyke marches and 3 Christopher Street Days, which are these huge pride parades in Germany and worldwide. And at the first march we went to was the Dyke March Cologne in July. Yes, and what happened basically is we were like, of course, we were told we were being transphobic and problematic, and like we were standing on top of like a bridge. So the Dyke March organizers actually made the effort to come up to us, them and a group we call the Solidarity Team, which we believe were hired by the Dyke March organizers. We don't know, but we believe that's the case, and to basically help them out there. And I was attacked by a man. I was put in a headlock,
and I defended myself and was released. But I also suffered like my wrist hurt, and another, like the woman, the lesbian who was holding the LGB flag, she was hit twice. For example, she was hit she took a punch to the throat and to her jaw, and the organizers did nothing. They showed their support to the solidarity team that attacked us, and they also made the effort to show their flag, which said basically Dykes with an asterisk for self-determination. So basically for the self-ID law here in Germany. So that was their priority, and also my flag was stolen. Like they stole the leper's flag while I was getting attacked.
Oh, that's so terrible. And did it make you scared to go on future marches, or how did you react to all of it?
Not at all. I did not react with fear at all, I think. I don't know why, but I feel like it really triggered something really powerful in me. Like, I already was a radical feminist before that, of course. I already had gone to demonstrations, but at this point I really like I think I'm reading gynecology actually right now, and Mary Daly, like, she talks about how her university, how they were treating her, and she said like how it really, like, it triggered her. What did she call it? She's using the special language, like her intergalactic spiraling journey.
Yeah.
I'm reading the German version. Yeah, and that's actually exactly how I felt. I felt like I felt so powerful for some reason. I felt so angry and so powerful. And I was just like, okay, let's go, let's do this. We're going to the other Dyke marches. They're not going to get rid of us. And in Dyke March Berlin, we were protected a little by the police, which helped a lot. So they couldn't really do anything. They still tried to attack us. And there were several police reports filed. And in Hamburg, we were attacked again because the police didn't help us, because the Dyke March organizers had talked to Hamburg police beforehand. We suppose, we don't know. But so basically they didn't help us. They actually threatened us, or I felt threatened by them. They pushed us like the police, and one of us was hit and scratched. And then we went to Bremen, which was a little less eventful, but we were also, we were excluded from the Dyke March. That's actually called a trans-inter-Dyke March with 2 asterisks in the name in Bremen. And actually, they actually admitted that there is no Dyke March in Bremen. There's just a trans-inter-Dyke March.
What's the real Dyke March planning and other groups you're in?
We're planning some pretty big things. I'm not going to go into detail until everything is sorted out, but we're definitely coming back next year and maybe the year after that, and who knows how long. Maybe it will become an international thing, but basically we're going to show up at their marches, and we might do our own marches in the future, and we will reclaim the word Dyke, which this is really important to me. So the Dyke has a translation in German, Kampflesbe, which basically translates to fighting lesbian. It's an insult, but I think it's a word. I don't know. I think it's a positive thing, you know, a lesbian who fights for her rights and who is not loved or accepted by men, and who will say no to men and defend this no. And I don't think.
I mean, it's forced upon us, the camp, the struggle. It's if we were allowed to just get on with whatever gardening or whatever we want to do, looking after the planet or whatever, then you wouldn't have to struggle. We only struggle because of the oppression against us. So.
Right. So basically, I don't think the Dyke marches we have right now qualify for this. Not only because of the lack of dykes, because of the lack of lesbians, but also because they are not saying no to men. They're not defending the boundaries. They're not acting in a feminist way. They have no or little solidarity with women or feminist consciousness. So that's why we are the real Dyke March, and we are a radical feminist lesbian group. And we're going to the Dyke marches.
How easy is it for young lesbians to network and find each other through all this queer sort of muddle that means probably it's very difficult to actually meet each other? Or do you find it is possible? How does that work?
It's horrible. There's no way for lesbians to really find each other and to associate, because not only because our spaces are flooded with men, predatory men, also because we're actively prevented from organizing as lesbians. And we're also prevented, like we don't even have the language. We're not given the language we need to just to describe and find ourselves and each other in queer spaces. I remember at the Dyke March Berlin, there was a woman, like a queer, like a trans activist woman, who came up to me. She wanted to tell me how I was being transphobic because we had the definition of lesbian on a banner. But actually, after a conversation with me, she started crying and telling me she felt the same, but basically didn't have the language to describe what she was feeling, like her homosexuality. So that's like, we need these radical feminist spaces to find each other. And then there I actually met some really cool lesbians, but before that I really thought I was the only lesbian in the world. And luckily, like the old radical feminist and lesbian literature, that also really saved me, I think. That's like this time window, this connection to other lesbians. Yeah, but the queer spaces, they are horrible. They're lesbophobic and actively hostile towards us. So there's no future for lesbians in these spaces.
We're really lucky that Dawn is here. And so Dawn Furness is proposing and preparing, is working on a campaign to keep toilets single sex and to highlight what's happening and the importance of toilets. Where are you from, and what are your sort of credentials? What's your bio, Dawn?
My bio is that I dedicated a lot of my time, several years of my life, to the Green Party and activism, specifically around women's rights activism. So I was elected the regional, well, first of all, I was elected the local party coordinator, then I was elected the regional coordinator, then I was elected onto the national governance body, which is essentially the management director of the National Green Party. And I was also elected the co-chair of Green Party Women, which was initially supposed to be the the female representation caucus within the Green Party, and was subsequently taken over by people who were not supporting women's rights. And we had a definition that did not define who was actually part of the women's caucus within the parties. Therefore, we had males who were voting in the elections and who were voting for males, who then became essentially the co-chairs of the women's caucus.
It's mad.
Which I find challenging, to be very blunt, and I think it's trying to not tar everyone within the organization, because there are some incredibly hardworking people who are fighting for climate change, and yet there seems to be a very strident sense within the HQ and with senior management and some of the leadership that they are completely enthralled to this gender ideology, to the utter lack of any kind of protection and adherence to the Equality Act 2010 in the United Kingdom. This is a very short presentation about something that I think we can do very quickly with a very fast turnaround. This is a suggestion for doing 2 social media campaigns simultaneously. The first one is a campaign around World Toilet Day, which is next Saturday on the 19th of November. Next slide, please. So what is World Toilet Day? Now, this is an annual unofficial observance day by the United Nations. And initially it was established to raise awareness of the sanitation problems. 4.7 billion people have inadequate access to sanitation. And within that, sort of nearly a billion people don't have even sort of the most basic facilities. Now, what we're trying to do is to raise awareness of things that are happening in the United Kingdom. And in 2021, there was a national consultation that happened with the gov.uk, which is the government website, where there was held by the Women Inequalities Committees and also other governmental organisations to get feedback on the toilet provision in the United Kingdom. So lots of organisations, including Sex Matters, Fair Play, Green Party Women, put in consultations about recommendations. And the idea is to use this international campaign to raise awareness about very serious issues that are also happening to do with the erasure of single-sex facilities, not just in the UK, but globally, and to create a small mini campaign that can then be done effectively and rolled out within a very short space of time to raise awareness of this issue, to do it in quite a light-hearted way, despite the gravity and the severity of the issue, in order to try and get as much public and press coverage as possible. And then once we've got some roots into those sort of networks of our local press around the toilet campaign, then sort of step that up to have a follow-on campaign a week later talking about the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and to do something specific around that. So next slide, please. Now, within the consultation, as was then the Minister for Equalities, Kemi Badenoch, noticed these key points that were essentially coming back from the consultation, that gender neutral facilities massively discriminate against females because the toilet provision that is then adopted is taken away from the female provision, and women can use the cubicles, but men use both the cubicles and urinals. So in effect, what you're doing is reducing the availability of toilet provision for women. And not only is that, reducing the actual availability of services, but in doing so, they realize that women have certain biological needs, including menstruation, including pregnancy, and including menopause, which means that they spend longer in the toilets. So anyone who's been to any sort of, bar or restaurant or theatre and has come out at the interval will notice that the men's queue for the toilets is usually short, if at all, and the women's queues for the toilets are going around the block. And this is why this toilet provision sort of came in, the consultation came in. So also it was raised that women feel much more uncomfortable in using mixed sex facilities. And what has been happening is that organizations have been adopting gender neutral as this sort of progressive title to be seen as being organizations that are non-discriminatory, but in actual fact what they're doing is massively discriminating against women. Next slide, please. So what we're planning on doing is kind of a low-key but fun project around adopting a local toilet in your local community. So ideally, round about a week beforehand, so this is sort of moving forward from now, is find a local toilet that is in your area, that is publicly owned, that is not privately owned, i.e. it's not a shopping centre, it's sort of accessible to members of the public, it's not owned by a private organisation, and is essentially run by the local council. And check that it's open on a Saturday. Now, this is a suggestion. Buy a cheap toilet seat or make one out of papier-mâché or cardboard, or create a large sort of poster board which has a cutout hole in the middle, similar to how we used to have the sort of saucy postcards in the United Kingdom in the 1950s and 60s. And in true Blue Peter fashion, here's one I made earlier. So this kind of thing where you have a large board with a hole cut out in the middle. And then you have printed hashtags of the campaign around the outside. This is obviously not finished, but then the idea you would put some colourful pictures around, or flowers, or just logos, or the feminist slogans, anything you want to do to sort of raise awareness, and then take photographs outside of the toilets on the day of the protest, where you are starting conversations with members of the public. And the idea that if also that there is a webinar that's happening next Friday evening with Helen Joyce and Maya Forstater through the Sex Matters platform, I think that you can book online. And they also have just released a legal guidance on the sex toilets, so the single sex service of toilet provision, and it's called Toilets Matter, a short guide to law and good practice. Now, using that as a quick reference guide, just to give people who are intending to participate in the campaign a bit more ammunition and a bit more information about what is the legal standing regarding single sex toilet provision under the law and what the council is legally obliged to provide, so that if people do start asking questions about specific issues, then you have a bit more information. Now, on the day of the protest, turn up outside your adopted toilet with your banner and with your toilet seat and take photographs, get involved in conversations, ask other people if they would like to be photographed with the toilet seat around their head, and use specific hashtags. So part of the campaign is to try and get interesting, fun photographs of local issues directly into the local press. Now, we can achieve that by drafting a template press release or by sending a letter to the editor in your local press, identifying them in advance. And then on the day when you get these photographs, you can then send them to your newsroom. And, you know, sub-editors and editors like toilet humor, they like, you know, taking the piss, all these different kind of things that they can sort of do as fun you know, headlines to then sort of promote the story. And if women are doing it nationally, then it then amplifies that messaging. So next slide, please. And the hashtags that we are using around this are the official hashtags of the World Toilet Day, but also Sex Matters and Toilets Matter. So that's the first one that's happening next Saturday on the 19th of November. Now, the next campaign, which is campaign 2, is tying into the Elimination Day, sorry, the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. Now, this is happening on Friday, the 25th of November, so 6 days after the first protest. And the next slide has more information about what this is. Now, essentially, this is an official day of observance by the United Nations, and they actually have, it's the start of 16 days of activism concluding on the 10th of December. Now, if anyone has been onto the website for the United Nations observance on this, the hashtags that they are planning on using are very obfuscating. It's, you know, they're using Orange the World as a way to draw attention to orange being a positive color and about, you know, hopeful about eliminating violence against women. And at no point does it mention men or male violence as being the cause of the violence that is seeking to be eliminated, which is frankly bullshit and needs to be called out. So the idea about this campaign is to call them out on their bullshit, where it's sort of holding account international organizations and NGOs like the United Nations for saying that they are effectively, you know, supporting this fantastic campaign without actually naming the problem. So this is what we're going to do. Next Friday, the 25th of November, when this is actually the International the Observance Day, this is something that you can do sitting at home on your Twitter keyboard, on your social media platforms. Every time that you see an organization or an NGO that is sharing this hashtag or sharing content or comments on the International Day of Elimination of Violence Against Women, you're just going to retweet it, or you're going to comment with male violence, name the problem, male violence against women. With these hashtags as a way to amplify that we are not holding accountable the actual people who are causing the violence in the first place. Now, this is something that you can do at home. It can be done, you know, throughout the day. It can even be done following the day, because obviously this is 10 days of activism, sorry, 16 days of activism concluding on the 10th of December. Now, the next slide has a summary of the hashtags that we'll be using. And we'll also, in the intervening period between now and this going live on the 25th, creating some memes that we can share under WDI, which will allow people to visual representation with also quotes and statistics, and about the use of passive language. And this is a huge problem in describing the problem, because you can't come up with a solution unless you can actually name the problem. So that is what the campaign is about. So it's trying to raise awareness, hold accountability, and also to, you know, hopefully embarrass all these organizations who are doing this, you know, thinking they're virtue signaling by sharing this particular hashtag and saying, well, look, if you're not going to, you or no one else is going to identify the problem, then we will.